Boker Tov, good morning on this fine Sunday morning. Now, why is it a fine Sunday morning? It is finer than most because we just entered into the month of Adar. The month of Adar is the month where we celebrate the holiday of Purim. And in the Megillah, it says, V'hachodesh asher nepach lahem. The entire month was transformed or turned over from sadness, from fear, into joy and celebration. So the Purim holiday impacts the entire month to be a happy month. In fact, Code of Jewish law says that if you have a court case, you have something difficult, even an operation, if God forbid one needs to for their health and so on, you should try to schedule these things during the month of Adar because it's a time of good mazel for us. So happy Chodesh Adar. And some of you who are listening to this class this morning know that I actually just returned from the Holy Land, from Israel. We had a very, very special trip over there, and maybe I'll talk about it a little bit during this Torah class. So we always begin with a bracha. Please join us. If you have your own cup of coffee, make your own bracha. If not, you answer Amen. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehakol Nihiya Bidvaro. I also always start the class with a mitzvah of tzedakah so that we can elicit blessings from the Almighty. That today's Torah class that I am excited to share with you should both be inspiring to me and to you, the listeners. So let's give a little tzedakah. So here we go. The portions of the week that we're learning now, this past Shabbat and this coming week, is all about the commandment that God gives us, the Osuli Migdash V'Shachanti B'Tocham, you should make for me a sanctuary and I will rest amongst them. And it talks in detail of all the commandments of the building of the tabernacle, which was sort of the forerunner of the building of the temple in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, which I had the merit to be very close by, right there, just basically a week ago. I was there. In fact, I was not only at the Western Wall, but I tried getting a little bit closer, and ironically, I was told by Israeli security that you cannot go closer than to this part because since your appearance is very Jewish, we are concerned and we don't want you to go any closer. Imagine this. In Jerusalem, in the holy land that belongs to us, that was given to us, said to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and so on, there's a place where somebody who looks Jewish cannot go. I don't. We'll leave it at that. I mean that's a whole discussion in its own right for a different time, perhaps. Anyway, so this week, or these weeks, are very special. This is when God tells us to build the Bet HaMikdash, but it also symbolizes not only the building of the Bet HaMikdash in Jerusalem, but as the verse itself says, "V'shachanti betocham," I will rest amongst them. And as I believe it's the Shalah who says, "Betoch kol echad ve'echad," He will dwell amongst each one of us within our own heart. So, as commentaries, and especially the more esoteric or Kabbalistic commentaries and so on, take a lesson from all the different parts of the Mishkan and the Bet HaMikdash and the vessels and the division of space and all that, and they apply it to one's heart, as our heart is a sort of a microcosm, is a reflection of a place of God's dwelling place in this world, representing the Bet HaMikdash. So what we learn about the Bet HaMikdash applies not only to the Holy Temple, it applies to ourselves on a personal level as we build our own personal Bet HaMikdash. And on that note, I want to zero in and focus in on one part of the building of the Bet HaMikdash. We're going to learn a Rashi together, the famous Rashi from France, the Uber commentary on the Torah. And it is in Parshat Truma, the Parsha that we just read. And over there in the fourth reading, Revi'i, the fourth reading, it begins with the walls of the Mishkan of the Tabernacle. I'm going to read the holy words of God in the Parsha in Hebrew, and then I will translate. V'yasita takrashim, you should make the krashim, the sort of the beams of wood, la Mishkan, for the Mishkan. Atzei shitim omdim, the wood should be standing rather than lying. The wall should be made in such a way where they're next to each other, standing, rather than lying upon each other. Now, so these atzei shitim, these cedar woods, were what was used for the walls of the Mishkan. Now, let's look into Rashi. And Rashi says the following. Okay? Rashi zoktazoi, as we say in Yiddish. Rashi says, Vasita takrashim. And Rashi here comments, and always Rashi, for the most part, takes his commentaries based on either the Talmud or the Midrashim, the Medrash on the verse. And Rashi says, why does it say Vasita et hakrashim? You should make the krashim. Almost like we're talking about some sort of wood which is very known, very famous, something that you don't have to even specify. It's the krashim, right? It's like you say the president or the place, it's something that we all know who or what that is. Zokter Azoi. So Rashi says the following. He says, Yaakov Avinu, our father Jacob, the patriarch Jacob, which incidentally, I was just visited our patriarch Jacob. I was at the Ma'arat HaMachpelah. I was at the double cave where our forefathers are buried just basically a week and a half ago. And, or a week ago, maybe even Sunday last week, could be. So it says like this, So it says like this, Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov our forefather, Nota Arozim b'Mitzrayim, he went ahead and he planted cedar trees in Mitzrayim. Jacob, when he came down to Egypt, he planted these cedar trees, Ukashemes, and when he died, when he passed away, Tziva Labanav La'aloisem Imoim, he told his children, the tribes, to pass on to the next generations, that when they will go out of Mitzrayim, they should take it with them, Kashiyetzim in Mitzrayim, Ba'omar Lahem, and he told them the following, Sha'osid HaKadosh Baruch Hu letzavois oisan lasus mishkan b'midbar. He said that God will, this was a prophecy, that God will eventually, when you leave Egypt, in 200 years, over 200 years, God will take you, or probably by the time that Jacob's passing about 200 years, or just under 200 years, God will take you out of Egypt, and he will command you to build for himself a home. So go ahead, see to it that you're going to actually have available, because in the desert, there's no cedar trees that grow, even though the title of the class is A Tree Grows in the Desert, or A Tree Grows ... in the desert. It was this special tree that Yaakov planted in Egypt that he told them to take with them into the desert when they would leave Egypt, and it was from these trees that they built the krashim for the Mishkan. They built these walls for the Mishkan, and hence, Vasisat HaKrashim, you should make the beams from the famous wood that Yaakov brought down. In fact, if you look into the Medrash, it gives us even a little bit more insight that when Yaakov came down to Egypt, why did he come down to Egypt? Because they finally told him that his son Yosef is alive, and with great excitement, he's coming down to Egypt to meet his son. So at that point, Yaakov stopped in Be'er Sheva, which is near Hebron, which is where Abraham, our forefather, that's where he lived. Vayeshev Avram Ba'er Be'er Sheva. He settled in Be'er Sheva after the famous story of the Akedah. And it was the plants. Where did Yaakov get those cedar trees? He got it from Be'er Sheva that originally Abraham planted. And it was those cedar trees that went with him to Egypt, and that he told his children that one day you'll be taken out, and so on. So this is the story, the amazing story of these krashim, these wooden beams that were used to build the Mishkan. Now, the obvious question over here is that commentaries ask, is that there are many materials, there was 13 or 15 materials that were needed and used to build the Mishkan, and some of the utensils and so on. And the Torah doesn't tell us that there was this like a major sort of major preparation and secret of where the materials came from, although many of those materials do not exist in a desert as the Jews are traveling from Egypt. And presumably, or even it even says so specifically, that certain things they sent messengers, they bought, they shopped, some things was a miracle. It tells us some of the things, the materials that they used was given to them by miracle. Why this tremendous sort of schlep? Why the need to take cedar trees from Beersheba, bring it down to Mitzrayim? Presumably in Mitzrayim in general you could have cedar trees. Why do you have to bring it down with you? And not so light cedar trees or even cedar saplings. Why do you need to take it? And why is it even important? And why are we being told this? They got it. They went shopping. They did an Amazon order. I mean, like, why? What's going on over here? And various answers. And there's a known answer from the Rebbe, a very beautiful, characteristic Rebbe answer. You know, the Rebbe has an amazing array of insights into all parts of the Torah. But then there are certain insights that is sort of characteristic Rebbe, and what the Rebbe really, in Yiddish we say, in Wasser Herzog gekocht, and what the Rebbe was very passionate about. And here the Rebbe says something so beautiful. And it's very relevant to the times that we find ourselves in. Here the Rebbe says the reason why Yaakov Avinu, why Jacob our father, our forefather, our patriarch, the reason why he wanted specifically these trees that came from Abram, that came from Beersheba, and he wanted them planted in Mitzrayim. And those were the trees that would be used to build the home for Hashem on the way to the Jews heading back to Israel, with the objective of building the temple in Jerusalem and settling in Jerusalem and so on, which is all part of God's plan to dwell in this world, which is achieved through the Beit HaMikdash and through that inspiration into all our hearts. So says the Rebbe that when Jews were going through the most difficult times during the exile and the suffering and the pain of Egypt, it is very easy to forget where you're coming from. It's very easy to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's very difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's very easy to become totally assimilated with your surroundings. It's very easy to give up on that hope and that promise that one day you will go out of Egypt, and one day you'll be called upon to receive the Torah, and one day you'll be called upon to build a home for the Almighty. It's very easy to forget that. It's very difficult to live with that. So Yaakov said, I want you to plant these trees so that these trees become a symbol of hope and belief, a visual symbol that you can see and believe. And when the kinderlach grow up and they ask their parents, what are these cedar trees doing over here? And the children say, these trees, they come from Yaakov Avinu, our forefather. The ants over here. Let me shut it off. These trees come from our forefather. This is the promise. This is the sign. This is the sign of the promise that we will come out of. We will get out of this enslavement. We will get out of this horror. We will have an exodus, and we will go up to Israel. We will inherit the lands, and we'll go back to Beersheba, and we'll go back to Jerusalem. This is the reason why Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our father, as a loving father, knowing, and he was told the prophecy that the Jews would have to go through the exile, the difficulty of Egypt. I want to have this. These were the Geula trees. These were redemption trees. Personally and collectively, in life, they're fundamental to the Torah approach is that everything that comes from Hashem, number one, has a purpose. There's a reason. Whatever happens to us is not just sort of happenstance, there's a reason, there's a purpose. And number two, that purpose is ultimately for the good. It's part of the journey, both personally and collectively, of our journey to the redemption, to the ultimate goal, which is, in a real sort of symbolic and more than just symbolic level, is building a home for Hashem, building a home for God, building a home and a future for mankind, for our people, for the Jewish nation, and so on. When we go through our personal challenges, spiritually and physically, it's a time of darkness. It's a time of pain. So too collectively as a people, when we go through what we have gone through since October 7th, it's a time of pain. It's a time where we don't understand, and we can't understand, and we don't justify. But nevertheless, at the same time, there's that Atzei Shittim, there's that symbolic Atzei Shittim that we have to connect to, that makes sure that we don't give up hope, that we know that we have that promise, that this is part of a journey, although we don't understand often and we object and we're not even meant to understand and we're meant to object, but at the same time we have that belief of the Atzei Shittim, whether it's physical reminder or some memory, strong memory that we have. I want to explain this and highlight this with some stories, both a story of the past that I heard, a very powerful story, and stories that we've seen right now. And the lesson for ourselves in our own personal life. I came across a story that a childhood mentor, well, in the neighborhood, there are many, I don't know if we call him a mentor, I'd call him more a role model. We grow up, the people around us, whether they know it or not, are our role models. One of these personalities, who as a child I grew up because they were a neighbor. We lived on the same block in Brooklyn, and this individual was very active. He was the head of the Chabad youth Tzirei Agudas Chabad, the Lubavitch youth organization, and he was very active. And he was a man of inspiration, and he gave classes and so on. He passed away not that long ago. His name was Reb Shmuel Butman. Some of you might know the name. Shmuel Butman said that he said this story that he said he heard this from a rabbi in Detroit. Did not mention, or at least I don't remember, I didn't see that the name of the rabbi is mentioned. And it's a very powerful story. But it's a sad story, and there's no shortage of sad stories in our history. He said the following. He said there was a fellow in his shul, in his synagogue, that whenever it came to Birchat Kohanim, the time when the Kohanim do the blessing, the time the Kohanim do the blessing is on the holidays, on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, on Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot, these 5 days of the year outside of Israel. That is when the blessing of the Kohanim, all the Kohanim go up to the Bima, and they do the very special blessing of the Kohanim. I was just now in Israel, in Jerusalem. They do this every single day. But outside of Israel, it's done 5 times a year. The Chazan calls up the Kohanim, and the Kohanim, the priests, go up and they do the Birchat Kohanim. This rabbi in Detroit noticed that every single time, when right before Birchat Kohanim, was a certain member of his synagogue who walked out of the shul. He walked out. And he was surprised. It was walking out, Birchas Kohanim, such a special blessing. Why are you walking out? And he was waiting for an opportunity to ask him, So one time, there was an opportunity. He invited him to his house for a holiday meal or a Shabbat meal, and they both said a Bissel L'chaim, just to loosen up and to enjoy the holiday. And at that point, he felt it was a good time to ask this fellow what's going on with this Birchas Kohanim, strange behavior. Usually, before Birchat Kohanim, if you come here, Chabad of Coral Springs or any synagogue, all the kinderlach are brought in. It's a whole to do. It's exciting. You want people bring their newborns just so that they could be part of the blessing of the Kohanim. You go to the Kotel on these holidays. There's hundreds, thousands probably of Kohanim, and it's something beautiful to experience. So he asked him, why do you walk out every single time Birchat Kohanim is said? She said, look, I'll tell you this way. He became very serious. And he said, I'll tell you why I walk out. He says, as you know, I'm an Auschwitz survivor. Wasn't fun to be in Auschwitz, of course. And there was a fellow there in Auschwitz, in our barrack, where there was, I think he said, there were 300 of us that were crammed into this barrack. And there was a fellow over there that he became sort of we called him our rabbi, our Rebbe, because he was always upbeat and he always tried to encourage us and he always had something positive to say, and he led us in the prayers and whatever he could do to help and to lift us up. It was him, and it was to he that we turned to get inspiration. And this was like 10 days before Pesach, before Passover. He announced to us, he says, Pesach is coming. We're going to have matzah and we're going to do a seder. Have matzah over here in Auschwitz. Okay. Comes the night of Pesach, and he somehow managed to get from somewhere, smuggled, whatever. We didn't know how. He had one matzah, and he said, everybody's going to get one small, itsy beansy bit of matzah so that you could experience the Pesach. And we all sat down on the floor inside the barrack. And he started to recite whatever of the Haggadah he knew by heart. And we were having a Pesach Seder. He lifted us up above the hell that we were, the bondage that we were in. And we were, for these few moments, we were in a different place. We were in redemption. And we didn't realize that as that was happening, the door sort of bursts open and the commander of the camp came in. And he was outraged. We all sort of jumped back into our beds. And he comes over to one of us with the gun to the fellow's head. And he says, tell me, who arranged this? Who organized this? The guy said to him, look, I'm not going to tattletale. I'm not going to give up or give up to you a fellow Jew over here. In his frustration, he grabbed someone else. And before he had a chance to harm someone else, our Rebbe stepped forward and he said, it was me. Kill me, don't kill anybody else. It was me who put this all together. In his rage, the Katzin, the commander, first was about to end his life on the spot. He says, nope, I don't want to do it right here. We'll do it tomorrow morning. We'll gather the entire camp. Everybody should see what punishment is given to somebody who violates the rules of the camp. The next morning, in the freezing cold, we all stood there, was prepared a place to hang our Rebbe. And the Nazi, in his desire to humiliate and so on, said to our Rebbe, it is customary for your last wish, and I too will give you a last wish. Tell me, what is your last wish? And our Rebbe said to him, my last wish is that since I'm a Kohen, I would like the chance to say the blessing of the Kohanim to all my fellow prisoners over here. The guy said, fine. He didn't even know what. Go ahead, say the words you have to say. And with all his heart and mind and his eyes closed, he went on to say, slowly and carefully, the words of the Birchat Kohanim. And all of us listening were saying, here's a fellow who had one last request. And what's important to him is that he should be able to give a blessing to the fellow inmates. And with tears streaming down our face, we parted this very special Rebbe of ours. And then this fellow who always walked out for Birchas Kohanim, in completing the story to the rabbi, he says like this. He says, I survived Auschwitz, obviously. And one time I was walking by a restaurant, non-kosher restaurant. I ordered a non-kosher meat sandwich. And as I was I put down the money, I paid. And as I was about to take that non-kosher sandwich, the imagery, the vision of this holy Rebbe and the Birchat Kohanim sort of esot geklungen, it was ringing in my ears. I just walked out. I couldn't eat that sandwich. And I left the money on the table. I just walked out. And from that point on, I made sure to keep kosher. And he says, not long after that, I got engaged because I did not lead a religious life per se. I got engaged to someone out of the faith, out of the Jewish faith. And 5 days before the chuppah, again, the impact and the sound and the whole vision of that last Birchat Kohanim that I heard, I called up the bride, who was a good person, and I said, I'm sorry, I just cannot. And I ended up marrying a fine Jewish girl, raised a Jewish family. So he said to the rabbi, I cannot listen to another Birchat Kohanim, as I don't want it. Is that Birchat Kohanim, is that blessing of the priests that has brought me where I am today and has saved me from sin, from assimilation, and so on. I do not want to dilute, weaken that Birchat Kohanim. I don't listen to any other Birchat Kohanim. I listen always only to that Birchat Kohanim. So please understand. That was the Atzei Shittim. That was the tree in this individual's life, that no matter what challenges came his way, he always went back to that vision, to that tree that was planted within him. You know, in this last week, we heard stories, there's constantly stories. October 7th is the worst thing that has happened to our people since the Holocaust. And yet, at the same time, you hear about these amazing experiences, an amazing awakening of faith that became the Atzei Shittim of some of these prisoners, especially in the last month, when you have prisoners who were there for almost 500 days. I don't remember the names of which prisoner, which hostage mentioned the story. One of the hostages, it was on WhatsApp. You could probably see it on on the statuses that I post on my WhatsApp. One of the women who was just released, again, within the last 3-4 weeks, said that she learned Arabic. She learned how to sing Shalom Aleichem in Arabic, because if she sang it in Hebrew, her captors would not allow her to sing it. So she learned how to say Shalom Aleichem, the prayer that we say Friday night, so that she could connect to her roots and that she could hope and find positivity and keep on going by singing the Shalom Aleichem on Friday night. And there are so many in Arabic, and there are so many stories like that. The story with Agam Berger, who said as I mentioned several weeks ago, B'derech Emunah B'charti, I chose in the path of faith. B'derech Emunah, and with Emunah Shafti, I came back with that strength of faith. And she said, what was her Atzei Shitim is while she was in one of the tunnels, she found a siddur that the soldiers left behind. Must have been there before they brought them in. And she says it was that siddur that kept her going before she was released, thank God. They told her, here's a Quran. We want you to have this Quran. And she refused. She says, I'm not going without my siddur. What strength of character. That was her Atzei Shittim. That was her cedar tree that Jacob, our forefather, implanted within all of us. So many incredible stories that we hear from these people that tell us that each one of us has that Atzei Shittim that Yaakov planted, that tells us that even in the darkest times, there is hope. There is a future. The darkest times spiritually, the most challenging times spiritually, or the darkest times collectively. We know that. We deeply believe that. As a nation, we will emerge victorious. We will continue our trip to the redemption, collective redemption. On a personal note, we have to ask ourselves, what is my Atzei Shittim? What are my children's Atzei Shittim? What memories? What deeply rooted tree of holiness, tree of good values, tree of Torah, tree of Judaism, am I implanting within myself a memory, an experience that whether either myself or my child goes through the darkest of times, that they could look at that tree, that memory, they could look at that memory, that experience that was implanted within ourselves, or within our kindlach, our students, that they could look to that, and that will keep them, that will hold them from straying spiritually, emotionally, mentally, on a personal journey. This is the Atzei Shittim. It's incredible what Yaakov Avinu's message over here is. The forefather of all our people. He says you have to have an Atzei Shittim Omdim, a Atzei Shittim that stands, doesn't lie down, doesn't give up, doesn't succumb, but on the contrary, grows from it, brings out deeper powers, inspires you both yourself and others. That's the Atzei Shittim Omdim of the Parsha. We believe in that Atzei Shittim. We deeply believe in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. You have to set and ask yourself in your life, what is that Atzei? What is that go-to Atzei Shittim when things are dark? And it is that Atzei Shittim, that cedar tree, that Jacob's cedar tree that keeps you going. That's a real question you have to ask yourself. And how are you planting? It doesn't just happen within your kindlach. That they should have Jacob's Atzei Shittim. May Hashem help that in the beautiful month of Adar, where it's V'napechu, we dealt with Haman. Things looked very dark then. There was no way to see, not there was no way, but it was difficult to see the light. It was difficult to see the light, me'afela la'ora, from darkness to light. But Hashem, through Queen Esther, through Mordechai, it was v'napechu, it was transformed, and we celebrate it until today. While Haman is gone and the Persians are gone, we're here. So too, we know with complete faith that also in our time there will be v'napechu, and there's no better time than now during the month of Purim, during the month of Adar, when we celebrate Purim, to remember that, to learn the lessons from that. We will have a wonderful month of Adar. We will have a wonderful celebration of Purim. You're definitely welcome to come celebrate with us here, but God willing, we'll all be in Yerushalayim with the ultimate v'napechu, where the exile that we are in, and the diaspora that we are in today, will turn into, I could tell you like this, one of the very special memories that I had when I was in Israel. Now, I know I posted the video, but it was so special when I was just standing there and serving food to the soldiers. I really felt like a Jewish bubby. I mean, it was just so special. It was so special. So create those moments for yourself. Create those moments for your kinderlach. Those moments that connect them forever in the most difficult of times, and then they'll be strong and they'll be better people and they'll be better for themselves and make the world around them a better. Have a wonderful, fantastic and week of simcha. When you enter into Adar, the Talmud tells us one should increase in joy. Have a fantastic and blessed week.